Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's professional development seminar. I want to thank you all for being here today. Again, I just really appreciate all of your collaboration, all of your commitment to your students and to our school, and I'm glad that you're here with us today. Today, we're going to be focusing on backwards design and how to enhance instruction with that. I know that may seem a little bit tedious and it may seem like a lot, but I'm going to show you how easy it can be today and how helpful it can be to all of your students. So everybody got a card when they walked in. Your card determined your table, which I'm assuming everybody's at. So go ahead and take a moment, look at the card that you received, make sure that it does correspond with the table that you're sitting at. This determines your group for today. Now, in your bag that you have been given, if you see at all your tables right in the middle of the bag, you have a little bag of mixed up learning objectives and different types of assessments on cards. Your challenge is that you have 8 minutes to sort the cards, and you're going to discuss the following questions with your group. Okay, so you have to discuss how you knew which assessment matched with which learning target, what happens when the assessment and the instruction do not align, and what is a unit you taught really well and what made it successful. So go ahead, we're going to have an 8-minute timer. I would love for us to share out at the end. So please go ahead and dive on in. Remember, every team depends on every member. So please be part of your team and be willing to collaborate. This would be the time that I would start the timer and the teachers would collaborate on this little hands-on activity just to get everybody talking. All right, so I really enjoyed hearing all of your thoughts and all of the conversations as I was going about the room. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of today. What is backwards design? So backwards design, today I really want you to think that you are on a journey and you are at the very beginning of that journey and you're thinking of, okay, what am I going to do as a teacher to get to the end of this journey and still make it alive, right? Intact, all in one piece. And not only that, but making sure that you are reaching every single one of the learners, despite all of their individualized needs and their different, situations that they work in. So if you're tired, I feel you, I understand. Let's take a step back from teaching today and let's really focus on the learning at hand. So to promote student achievement, you have to really look at the big picture. Now, if you're anything like me, this could be a little hard at times, right? You want to look at the small details, the little things that make the big picture. But sometimes we have to take a step back, zoom out, and look at what our intention is. We have to design with that intention by creating the lessons that are around the desired outcome, right? That destination in our journey. So not only are you coaches of understanding, you are sure banks of knowledge, but you have to remember that you are coaching these students. You are a guide per se, even a tour guide on our little adventure, right? So let's make the students actually have ownership in their learning, but designing meaningful experiences. So that way it's taking a lot of the pressure off of you and kind of allowing the students to take their learning into their own hands, feeling responsible for that commitment to their own learning. So let's break it down, okay? We got 4 easy steps today. The main focus I'm going to have is on the first 3. So step 1 is identify your desired results, okay? We're trying to think about our destination here. What's the point? Where are you going and why are you going there? What's the big idea? Why should we learn this? If any of you are anything like me, I know that in school I got probably in trouble a couple of times for asking, why in the world am I learning this? What's the purpose, right? So you first have to figure out your destination to figure out how you're going to get there in the first place, right? You don't show up at the airport before deciding your flight unless you're spontaneous like that. Step 2 is to determine acceptable evidence. So we have to figure out, okay, how will we know if the students have achieved what we desire them to know? what is going to be acceptable as evidence. Okay. And today you're going to see that we're trying to take a little bit of a step back away from traditional multiple choice, sure, star-based assessments, which can be used in moderation. However, I really want you to think a little bit further, extend your thinking. And so, of course, we got to know that destination. Okay. We got to know, okay, well, like, what's the test going to be like? What are we wanting them to truly understand? And then we got to plan the journey there, right? This is all the fun stuff, all the tourism, all the little excursions you got planned. So these are going to be the learning experiences and instruction. What activities are going to equip them with the needed knowledge they have? What materials and resources may you need to prepare? And then, of course, step 4, I do want to mention step 4 because as a PBL campus, we do have to keep in mind that we would like to encourage you to extend it into a PBL opportunity and, of course, differentiate as needed for your student population. Now let's get into the small details. This is my forte here. Okay, so let's look at backwards design and what an example for that looks like. Because if you understand and learn anything like me, I know that I need examples constantly. So I'm not just going to sit here and preach to you today about how to use backwards design. I'm going to show you what it looks like in action. So step 1, as we mentioned, is identifying a desired result. Okay. This starts with your standard, right? You have to know how to break down your standard and look at it deeper. Now, this may be a piece of cake for some of us, and some of us still may be learning how to properly do this. One thing that I know has worked for a lot of educators in the past is really focusing on the what they're doing. On the verb, right? ELA teachers, I know you love that, okay? Focusing on the verb, seeing what we're actually doing and what is being utilized. So the standard I use is 6th grade math. So it's 6.3 C and D. Students will represent integer operations with concrete models, connect actions to standardized algorithm, and perform integer operations with fluency. So if you see, based on what I said with the verbs, we have 3 very specific verbs. They're going to represent integer operations. What with? With concrete models. We're going to connect the actions to the standardized algorithm, and then we're going to perform the integer operations with fluency. So just by breaking it down, I can already be, okay, they need to be able to represent. Great. We're going to have questions about representing and how that represents. We're going to have connecting it to an algorithm, and we're going to have them perform the integer operations themselves. So some essential questions that you can use would be, how do we represent numbers less than 0? Why do we need them? What actions do we perform with models to tell us about the symbols we write? How can we verify that an algorithm works using concrete models? And then what patterns exist when we add, subtract, multiply, and divide? Something that a lot of students often forget is, there's a built-up stigma of math being so difficult, but it's really just observing and patterns. And so you'll notice all of my essential questions are not questions that are definitive. It's not what is -1 + 3, what is 3 times -5. It is focusing on the deeper meaning of the standard. Now, if you're still practicing this, there's a couple different things you can use to really study the standard and what the desired outcome would be. So one thing you can use is the lead forward field guides, which we have available on campus. The frequency distribution table, which is also a lead forward resource you can find online for free. And then the release star questions on lead forward as well. So that way, if you're wanting to see how certain questions are asked, and that way you can model questions you create for your students from that. And so we can see that all the learning targets pretty much directly relate back to the standard as well as the essential questions. So we're identifying really what we're getting to. Again, that journey, not the journey, the destination, right? Where we're trying to go at the end of the day, the big picture people. So now we have to determine, okay, what is the acceptable evidence? What kind of assessment are we going to give? Now, today I'm going to show you a summative performance task. This is not mandated. Assessments can look in multiple different ways. And if you do want any further training on that or want some helpful videos for that, feel free to reach out and I would love to provide those learning opportunities for you. If you want to even ask your peers in your groups today what different types of assessments they use, whether it may be a performance task, a PBL. You can really utilize so many different types of assessment that they don't all have to be the same cookie cutter traditional assessment. But today I'm going to be looking for 6 things. Now you'll notice these 6 things come again directly from the standard. So first, concrete representation, right? They have to use a concrete representation of models. So that's going to be them using manipulatives or drawings to model the problem. There we go. Expectation 2, writing equations. They have to translate the concrete model into equations using the standard notation, just essentially taking it from model to standard algorithm. Third, we have algorithm application, which aligns to the third part of our TEK. Justification, explaining how they connect to the algorithm, which again is a second part of our TEK. Verification, which is checking using alternative methods, trying to get them to think a little bit beyond, use their comfortability, but then use other things to help really open their mind up to different methods. And then, of course, communication, presenting their findings clearly. And this is something that I feel like this generation could really work on, right? Is explaining. I know that you in classrooms know as much as I do that when you ask a student to explain, even if they got the right answer with ease, they might just stare at you like this, like you have 5 heads. And so getting them to really describe, to explain, use that verbal comprehension. And that's a really important tool here. So again, these can be differentiated. I did want to provide you with a couple small ideas. This is not really something we're going to spend a lot of time on, but it's something you can take into consideration when planning assessments for your students. So you can use different learning styles to customize your assessments a little bit. And so some different ideas are here. Again, I'm going to be sending out this whole entire presentation. So we're not going to take a long time on this right now. We're going to kind of skip past it. But if you are interested in looking at some different ideas, feel free to look at it later on in your own time. So here's my example of a rubric. So again, it's using the criteria that I just told you about, the 6 pieces of criteria. And I am using this rubric to rate them all the way from a 4 to a 1, from exemplary, proficient, developing, or incomplete. Now, as I said, they can have a little bit of choice in the product. I might give them 3 separate choices for a product. And even though the products may vary in the way that they look, like for example, I might have somebody make a video game. I might have somebody make a children's book. I might have somebody create an escape room. But regardless of what the product looks like, I'm still going to use the same rubric because my expectations for their knowledge at the end of the day is the same as that thing. So even though the journey may look different, the destination still has to stay the same, which is why starting at the back and working forward is very important. So you can see here, it's all pretty standard, but you can see that it's pretty precise, it's pretty to the point. So, exemplary, you start with accurately representing all questions, representing most operations for proficient, attempted representation for developing, or missing an inaccurate representation. Not only does this help you actually be able to grade their work with ease, but it's again still setting the same standard for all students regardless of what final product they have. And then of course, my favorite part, I love zooming into the itty bitty stuff, planning the learning experiences and instruction. So let's plan the journey, right? So that's where you have to look back at your TEK again. So you can see our TEK is right up here. When I looked at this, again, like I said earlier, it's kind of broken into 3 parts. So I made 3 phases within our class. Phase 1 is building the conceptual foundation. So that's going to be day 1 through 5. I see I made a little typo there. Sorry, guys. But 1 through 5 is going to be our conceptual foundation, right? Utilizing the models, really visualizing what they may already know about negative and positive numbers. This is kind of activating the prior knowledge, or, activating the schema a little bit, utilizing visualization to get them to understand the algorithm later on. And so, again, that whole entire process is going to be within the first 5 days. We're going to go into comparing number lines. We're going to even spiral in the inequality symbol, which is often used with integers to compare. But we're mainly breaking it down into the concrete visuals. Phase 2 is introducing the algorithm. Now, when I am telling you that we're introducing this material, what I don't want you to do is spend the whole class getting direct instruction. What I would rather is having you model a couple of problems for the students, explaining the concept behind it, and then allowing them to truly apply those skills, whether in groups or independent or in partners. That is totally based on what you prefer the teacher. Now, if you're wanting a little more guidance and individualized instruction and allowing students to choose their own path and take a little more ownership in that, again, feel free to reach out, and I would love to connect you to our instructional coach who can give you a little bit more guidance on that. But then breaking down into the third one is building fluency. And again, this is where, okay, we are going to have stations. We're going to have you not only hands-on and conceptually learning, we're going to have you learning with algorithms and with patterns. We're going to really build that fluency by giving you several opportunities to try things out. We're also going to give an opportunity for choosing strategies, because again, like I've told my students in the past, no brain is alike. You have to figure out what works best for you, especially in math. And then lesson 11 is going to be error analysis. Error analysis is incredibly effective when students are often hitting a brick wall. They're easily able to look at somebody else's work and analyze, oh no, they did something wrong here. This is the error they made, and here's the correct solution. And then, of course, step 3 is differentiation, right? Moving on to really going deep into it. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but providing manipulatives for all the activities, using smaller numbers or reducing the number of steps based on the ability of your students. You know them best. So if you're noticing, Timothy over here is not getting the problem right, take into consideration, okay, maybe I need to use smaller numbers to really build the pattern understanding and observation before introducing larger numbers, or reducing the number of steps. You can even pre-teach vocabulary and concepts, which I know has helped a lot of my ELLs in the past. You can provide anchor charts, visual support, supplemental aids. You could even provide sentence stems and the use of consistent language to really get the ELLs to participate as well. And then for advanced learners, kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, you can extend to multi-step problems with variables, introducing concepts that we're going to have later on in the year. You could even give them different logic puzzles with integers, have them truly work them out, or you can even have them create their own problems. Something that has been available to me in the past that is available to a lot of you in some regards is PRBLs, which are basically a PBL, but in a truncated period of time, where it might be a task for a couple of days, but may not last as long as a PBL typically would. So when you're the teacher, of course, you guys know we have to prep our materials and resources. So what would I need? So that way I'm not running in at 7:40 in the morning going, oh my gosh, I have to get all my things ready. Okay. If you have these ready at the beginning of the unit and you know what to expect, it becomes a lot easier for you on a day-to-day basis. So we would need 2 color counters. Laminated number lines are wonderful, especially for visual students and kinesthetic students. Being able to actually move the marker and move the place on the number line is incredibly effective. Anchor charts, of course, real world problems, any kind of data sheets, or even exit tickets that you may want to use. And so again, this kind of goes a little bit more into depth, but we have to remember we're all different. And so to promote student choice, you could even use choice boards and playlists. For real world experiences, you can use labs and simulations. And no, it's not just for science. Using videos and demonstrations can also help. Using card sorts, task cards, reading and writing activities. Really, there is no limit to what you're able to do, especially if it's interdisciplinary learning. That's going to make it very concrete for these students. So again, differentiation is a whole other topic that we could go very in depth on, but I really want you again to remember the meat and potatoes today. Okay, you have to start at the end. You have to focus on your desired student outcomes and know what the outcome should look like, what it should sound like, what it should feel like. And then you have to think about, okay, well, how am I going to assess that? How am I going to figure out if they get to that destination? And then plan the journey. By backwards designing, it's not only going to help you be able to understand the content and teach it to the best of your ability, it's going to help your students, and not only just the general ed students, but the students of every population, of every individualized need. So although I know it may seem like a lot, and I promise when I first heard about it, I thought it was a lot too. In a way, I want you to think of it as front loading. If you prepare the unit and prepare properly, you will complete the unit with ease. Not only is it backwards designed for your students, it's for you too. So I want to remind you all today with just a quote that I really love: plan backwards as well as forward. Set objectives and trace them back to see how you achieve them. You may find that no path can get you there, but plan forward to see where your steps will take you. They may not be clear or intuitive. So remember, even if it's a challenge, even if it's a little bit difficult, plan backwards. Planning backwards helps you plan forwards. So again, I want to thank you all for your time today. All of these sources are linked down here on the presentation. So if you want to go down here to any of these resources, it has basically everything that we've talked about today and more. Again, I've sent you this whole entire thing. And if you've looked throughout the presentation, anything that is underlined is hyperlinked in there. And so that way you are allowed to go click, look at more examples, and be able to utilize this for your classroom. I'm really excited to start seeing your backwards planning. We are going to be utilizing some discussion in PLCs, so be prepared to share with us how you've internalized your lesson. So now that I am done talking to you guys, I want to give you, just like we like to give our students, a little bit of work time. So you can collaborate with your groups today, or if you would like, you can move to your grade team level. However, I do want you with a learning community today. So whether it is your random group or your grade level team, go ahead and regroup yourself. And I want you to start exploring your next unit. And even for those of you that may think the next unit is ready, I challenge you to take a step back and look at it one more time. And remember, keep the end in mind. Have a great day, everybody.